Hey, deserving listeners, this is Chapter 5 in my deep dive on schizoid personality. And I thought, as an intro, I would provide some typologies that were developed for those with schizoid. The first typology was formally developed by Harry Guntrip, who was a British psychoanalyst. He was a major contributor to object relations theory, which is a part of psychodynamic or psychoanalytic theory. And the first theory that I loved, fell in love with during graduate school, they asked us to pick one of the theories among hundreds, and object relations theory was my thing. Over time, I have modified my theory adherence to include a lot of different schools of thought, but at first, object relations was my thing. And Harry Guntrip based his typology of schizoids on the work of Ronald Fairbairn and Donald Winnicott, who both talked about schizoid among a lot of other things. So the two types are classic schizoids and secret schizoids. So the classic schizoid is someone who is a loner in that they avoid interacting with other people. They don't want to interact with other people, or at least they don't think they want to. And they are also detached from their emotions. They're unemotional. They present with a flat affect, meaning they seem like they're like a robot. They lack facial expressions. They don't react to things. When they describe things that should have emotional content, there won't be any emotional content in their descriptions. They don't react to other people having emotions. Not that they don't have empathy, but their empathy is seriously compromised by their defensive structure. So that's the classic schizoid and the quintessential schizoid, but what they called classic. The second type is the secret schizoid, and I talked about this a lot in Chapter 4, and I presented Chapter 3, I presented a case of a secret schizoid. So for these people, they are not a loner, and they are not seemingly detached from their emotions. They are social within normal limits. They seemingly have the typical range of relationships. They have a partner, a spouse. They have friends. They have acquaintances. They socialize at work. They seemingly have the normal emotional expressions. They seemingly react to other people's emotions. But deep down, they keep their distance, both with emotions and intimacy, meaning that they suppress their emotions, or they're afraid of their emotions, or they have a difficult time even feeling their emotions. And they also keep their distance from others. They might be physically close to others, but inside they keep their distance. They either put on an act of someone who is not reserved, or they just keep a lot of things about themselves private, even though they are interacting a lot with other people. A lot of people around these secret schizoids will think of the secret schizoid as being pleasant and being a comfortable presence in their life, but they will also see those individuals as being maybe a little shallow, meaning that they're not really into deep conversations. They don't seemingly have a lot of ups and downs emotionally, that kind of thing. So for the secret schizoids early in life, they learned that it's safer to act quote unquote normal to stop others from invading them. When one of the primary traumas for a schizoid is to feel invaded in terms of their emotions and who they are, and not in a light way. The invasion is often fairly abusive in nature. It's also a primary trauma for people with schizoid that they are often neglected, if not always. But at the very least, for the secret schizoid, when they were developing their defensive structure from the age of 1 to 5, they learned that in order to have safety and security, and maybe eke out a little bit of attunement from their caregivers, They learned that if they completely shut down the way that they had an impulse to do because of their environment, they would either incur more punishment. The parents would punish the kid for not showing emotion or for not interacting, or the parents would be alarmed that the child was pulling away, and the parents would invade even more. There's a lot of different circumstances regarding caregiving that can result in this. But anyway, the child learns, oh, okay, I'm going to pull away for sure. I'm going to shut down emotionally, and I'm going to pull away intimacy-wise. I'm going to pull away. But I can't let on that I'm doing that. I have to continue to act like I'm interacting because that's the optimal approach. Now, for other schizoid kids, they pull away and they either aren't punished or harmed more by doing that, or they're even rewarded. Some parents will actually, parents of schizoids will actually reward children for shutting down emotionally, reward children for pulling away in terms of dependency. So an example of a secret schizoid would be a man at work. He talks with others. He reacts similarly to others. He's considered a good leader. He's able to give speeches with ease. After the speeches, he's nice, but he avoids closeness and he avoids genuine emotion. He smiles, he has eye contact, but all day long he knows that he's putting on an act to survive. He knows that this public persona is not the real him. He doesn't do this to manipulate others like a psychopath might, but he does it to survive, or at least that's how they often see it, is that it's safe when they achieve safety by being distant and detached. That's what they learned earlier on. And they learn to truly be safe, you have to act like you're not pulling away. Otherwise, you will alert people or cause more problems. And that gets set in stone when you're young in your environment, and then you continue to do that as an adult, even though you probably don't have to. But it's habit, right? And the perception of others and yourself is set not in stone, but it's fairly rigid, and the assumptions that were true when they were 5 are no longer true, but they still believe that they're true. Anyway, so that's one type, and I thought I would also provide a more descriptive type developed by Theodore Millon. He is was an American psychologist and prolific author, particularly with personality disorders. I don't think he's still with us. I don't know if I should say was or is. Let me Google him. I'm pretty sure he's no longer with us. I'd be surprised if he was, because he's been around a long time. Yeah, he died in 2014. Rest in peace. A lot of my knowledge and a lot of what I've discovered about personality disorders has been validated by Theodore Millon. I would learn things clinically with clients and would read Theodore Millon's work and say, oh, okay, my inklings were in the right direction, because he provides a lot of research and a very robust system. And if you like what I have to say about personality disorders or personality in general, I would seek out Theodore Millon's work. So he has 4 different types of schizoid. They are languid schizoids, remote schizoids, affectless schizoids, and depersonalized schizoids. So let's describe each one. So the first type to describe here is the languid schizoid, according to Millon. And the languid schizoids are quiet. They are overly dependent on others and believe that they can't do things on their own. They will have a very low activation level, meaning that they don't do much. They might remain very still or remain invisible and unnoticeable to others. They might seem very tired, lethargic, lackadaisical, exhausted, which can often pull people in to take care of them. They will lack spontaneity. They might seek the simple pleasures of life. Like today, they might play very simple games on their phone all the time. But deep down, they might experience profound angst and distress, but they lack the vitality to express it. So they might be able to describe to some extent that they're suffering on the inside, but it won't seem to be expressed with any kind of life. In terms of parenting, the languid schizoids will have likely experienced a lack of stimulus during the first 2 years of life due to some level of neglect, probably a severe level of neglect. The second type that Milan delineates is the remote schizoid. So these schizoid personality disordered individuals will seem very remote, distant. They will seem very removed. They will seem inaccessible. They will be very solitary and isolated. They will seem disconnected. They will seem to be drifting through life without any direction. And unlike other schizoids, these people do want relationships and actually do have intense emotions, but they have learned to chronically suppress these urges and expressions. So with the other schizoids, they also deep down have these feelings, but they don't. Those feelings aren't accessible to them, probably, depending on the situation. Whereas for the remote schizoid, if they were being honest with you, they actually would say that they do have a need for relationships. They do long for that, and they do experience emotions, very primitive emotions, because they don't have an understanding of them. But they do feel them, and they do feel urges, but they know that they need to suppress those. For these folks, in terms of parenting early in life, they likely experienced abuse and harm, and they withdrew defensively. The third type is the affect-less schizoid, meaning that they show emotion very little. They will be particularly unemotional, even more so than other people with schizoid personality. They will seem passionless, meaning that they don't have any goals or they don't like anything. Their favorite food, for example, might either not exist or they don't have any emotion when they describe it. They will seem unresponsive. They will seem unaffectionate and uncaring, like they just don't care about other people. They will come across as being very cold to others. And the fourth and last type that Milan delineated is the depersonalized schizoid. So meaning that the individuals are particularly depersonalized, associative from themselves and their bodies and their minds. These schizoids are the daydreamers. They are disengaged from the world and maybe even from their body. They might often be staring into empty space like they're in a trance or something. So those are the four different types of schizoid according to Milan. And for me, I don't use this system, these four types, but it is kind of helpful to keep it in mind when one is assessing individuals and also when one is trying to determine the particular constellation of symptoms for a particular person with schizoid personality, because there's a wide variety, as you can kind of hear in these different types. Now, to be clear, there's a lot of overlap between these different types because they all suffer from schizoid personality. So they're all going to be unemotional in general on average. They're all going to be more of a loner. It's just that for some of them, they're even more so a loner or even more so unemotional than the other people with schizoid personality. So the rest of this episode is just going to be for patrons of the podcast. So if you want to hear the rest of this chapter, become a patron by going to patreon.com. When you become a patron, you are quite literally paying my bills so that I don't have to work at my other jobs as much, so that I can spend the time doing the podcast and the YouTube channel. And in particular, I can spend the months of prep time it takes me to prep for these deep dives. So if you want to be a part of that, then you can. Otherwise, please take care of yourself, truly, because you deserve it. You really, really do.